Hello and welcome to another Night Guys Gaming video. I'm excited to show you my first battle report I've been able to put together. And this one is into the World Eaters. So we're taking our Seer Council, Aeldari, into the World Eaters, and my opponent was running the Berserker warband. With this battle report, I really want to show what I was thinking and try to help explain some of the decision making, not just tell you what happened during the game, but actually why I was making the decisions that I was making and how I came to the conclusions that I did, so that I can hopefully help you when you are trying to make those same decisions. A lot of times the people I'm coaching seem to have trouble with whether or not to play aggressive or reserved in each turn. And there are a lot of factors to consider, and it is a difficult decision, but it is one that you'll probably have to make every single game. Whether it's turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, you're going to have to play aggressive at some point, and knowing when to play aggressive is a big factor on whether or not you win the game. If you go aggressive too early and the situation isn't right, you can get hit back and just lose because you just lost too much of your army. You didn't gain enough tempo. If you wait too long to go aggressive, you can lose too much of the board control, and you can get behind too far in points to where you can't come back. And so having the balance of understanding when to go in aggressive versus when to play reserved is a big factor. And this battle report is just touching on one of those situations. Every game is going to be different. You're not going to play every game the way I did in this one. And this is not like a top table level game. This isn't a game that you would see at the top tables of a massive GT, but this is more of like a mid-table game, somebody you would see at a lot of tournaments that you go to, or a local tournament, as we were playing this competitively, but it was also, you know, again, just a person, and this was a random person on the TTS Discord channel that I found and ended up playing, and he was a great opponent and really did the best he could. And he had not played into Aeldari since the Codex, and I had not played into the World Eaters since their new Codex has come out. So we were both kind of learning each other's armies. So there was a couple little things we did where we were okay with kind of, you know, taking it back because the opponent didn't know exactly what I was capable of doing in the new Codex. He was used to dealing with the Index Aeldari. But this is something that I want to get some feedback from you on whether or not this battle report is clear, it's easily understood, it's presented in a way that is valuable to you, because this is a battle report kind of thing that I want to do probably like once a month. I want to provide some value to some of the people that are supporting me on Patreon, and I think I'm going to be doing battle reports into specific factions in order to bring that value to those that are paying members. But I wanted to do a free battle report first just to get some feedback and make sure that I'm making these in a way that is valuable to the people watching. And so for those of you that are supporting me on Patreon, I want to give a shout out to Ashley, Brian, and John. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to bringing some content for you guys, some extra content, and appreciation for your support. For those of you that are just wanting to be members on Patreon, I do always have my list, my meta list, up and available on Patreon. So just as a free member, you can always check the list, and I will be keeping it updated as I keep working through what I like and the things that I'm enjoying in the list that I feel is the strongest in the meta when it comes to Seer Council. And as we start to explore other detachments in the future, I will be keeping those lists up to date as well. But right now we've been focused on Seer Council, but it won't be too much longer once we finish up the next video going into the tactics and strategies, basically part 2 of the deep dive in Seer Council, that will be looking at some other detachments. So with all that in mind, let's take a look at the list that was taken in this battle report. So I'll start with my list, and it's, again, a little bit of a variation of what you'll find on my Patreon, but I wanted to test some things out. And so we have Eldrad, Farseer with the Torque, of course, one of my favorite characters to take with the Guardian Defenders, just causes a lot of problems for the opponent. We have Fuegan, Lycus, Janzar, Baharoth. I am testing out a single Warlock to go with the Farseer and the Guardian Defenders, as opposed to taking the 4x Conclave, because the price changes to the 4x Conclave, so we're testing that out. And I took 5 Corsair Void Reavers, which have more OC than the Rangers, and a bunch more punch in general than the Rangers do, and so I've been kind of wanting to try them out for 5 more points and see how they feel to me. I kind of go back and forth between the Rangers and them and what I want, but the Corsair Void Reavers definitely bring a few things that the Rangers don't have, which is pretty nice. We have Guardian Defenders, of course, led by the Seer. We have the Storm Guardians, led by Eldrad. 5 Dark Reapers with a missile launcher on the Exarch, 5 Fire Dragons with the Fire Pike led by Fuegan, 5 Howling Banshees with Executioner led by Jane Czar, 5 Striking Scorpions. Now this is one that you can make a little change here. For those of you that really don't like playing without Lucid Eye, I would downgrade the Striking Scorpions to Rangers. That gives you 30 points. Use those 30 points to pay for Lucid Eye. Put it on the Lone Warlock, and there you go. Now you have Lucid Eye in the list. 10 Swooping Hawks with Hawk Talon to go with Baharoth, so we get our max mortal wounds when he comes down. A Warwalker with Missile Launcher and Bright Lance. The Missile Launcher gives us that 48-inch range, and we can use a Blast Profile just to try to be more consistent with making sure we're applying the debuff, because all we have to do is hit our opponent. We have 2 sets of 2 Warlock Conclaves with Spears, of course going with each set of Guardians. We have a Warlock Skyrunner with Spear and another Warlock Skyrunner with Spear to go on their own and do mission actions and help us with applying stratagems. We have 5 Warp Spiders with the Exarch having the Blade Array going with Lycus, of course. 5 Warp Spiders, the Exarch having the Spinneret and Death Weavers as another squad. So that is the list. Really like it. I don't think I'm going to make any changes for the time being as I keep testing this list out against different factions. It performed well. I'm really enjoying the way it feels. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the opponent's list. Now this was a World Eaters list, again with a Berserker War band. Angron leading the way with Khorne the Betrayer, leading 10 Khorne Berserkers. Master of Executions leading 10 more Khorne Berserkers. He had a Slaughterbound that was leading 6 8-bound. A Chaos Rhino that had Khorne and his Berserkers in it. 2 Chaos Spawn. 2 sets of 3 8-bound units. A set of Exalted 8-bound, just 3 of them that he had in Deep Strike, 1 Forge Fiend, and then 10 Jackals for the sticky objectives. And that was the list that my opponent brought. So now that we've gone through the list and we've kind of set up the stage, let's take a look at the game, which I did do in TTS, or Tabletop Simulator, because I felt like I could keep the perspective better for you guys, and I don't have the equipment right now to do in-person games and have a camera that sits above the table and all that. So possibly in the future, as I'm able to get more equipment, that might be something I'm able to do. But for now, I feel like Tabletop Simulator was the easiest way for me to present the game. Let me know your thoughts, please. I'm, again, always happy to get feedback. And I want to make sure things are as clear and easy for you guys to understand, and I want to bring as much value to you as I can. So let's take a look at the game. So let's take a quick look. We're against World Eaters. And this is a new codex. So this is their codex that is more like their index. I think it's Berserker Warband, if I remember correctly. They have a Forge Fiend back here. They've got Angron, a Rhino full of Berserkers, a squad of Berserkers. The Berserkers on the right here have the Master of Executions. The squad in the Rhino has Khorne. They've got 8-bound led with I forget the name of the guy that leads them, but he also has Scout and as well, so that he can scout. He can also deep strike, but they have Scout 6-inch, I believe, if I remember correctly. Then he has some Warp Spawn sitting here, or Chaos Spawn, I guess, and they have Scout 8 and 10-inch move, and they can advance and charge. So they have a very long threat range from the deployment zone, kind of like Gene Stealers in a sense. And he's got another set of 8-bound here that have Scout. He's also got a set of Exalted 8-bound in Deep Strike, ready to come in from Deep Strike. And let's see here. Yes, that is his army there. And so for us, we waited. We ended up losing the roll-off, and he had us go first. But I wanted to wait and see how he set up before I fully finished deploying, especially since he had no infiltrators. I waited to the end to deploy my Scorpions. Now, before I mention it, can we just take a pause here, maybe pause the video even, and just take a look at this deployment situation and possibly think about why the Scorpions are here versus somewhere else and what the point of them were. And so, yeah, just kind of think about that as I talk about the rest of the deployment, because that's a very important thing to consider, especially when going into a highly aggressive melee-oriented army. What you do with your infiltrators is really important, and having a plan for them is very important. So just going over the list, this is my new list that I've been kind of doing some tests with. We have Void Reavers right here that have Scout. We've got the Jane's Iron Howling Banshees that you can't quite see hidden back here, ready to protect them or to move forward depending on the situation. We've got a Warlock Skyrunner. We've got our Dark Reapers in the corner ready to move out and take some nice long shots. We can move them up and get this line of sight. We can move them over and get this line of sight. So we have two really nice angles for the Dark Reapers, and I really like putting them in this corner. This side is a little bit harder because they can move up this way and get this shot, but they're a lot closer to our opponent, and they can also move inside this ruin and get shots here, but that's not nearly as beneficial as you can see by the way the opponent's set up, is putting them in this corner and being able to have this line of sight and this line of sight. So generally though, what you're going to want to do with your Dark Reapers is put them in corners and put them in places where they're going to get those nice long lines of sight to put pressure on your opponent, make it hard for them to move without being shot by the Dark Reapers. Now on this list, I only have one squad of Dark Reapers, just a 5-man, because I put some points into a Warwalker. He's black, so he's kind of hard to see right there, but that's where he is. And he has the ability to scout, and we can do a lot of different things with his scout move. So we can move the Warwalker this direction if we want to prepare him to be able to move out either way to get line of sight. We can move him back if we want to keep him safe. And he's fast enough that we can really use him in a lot of different ways. And we can also move him forward if we want to get different lines of sight. You know, he can go in this ruin and shoot across here. He can get behind the ruin and shoot up this way. So there's a lot of different options we can do with the Warwalker, whether we want to move him back, move him forward, because of his range. And I'm using him with a Bright Lance and a missile launcher. And the reason is the Bright Lance is generally going to be what he wants to shoot at. The missile launcher is also a decent weapon that gives us a few different profiles. And if I'm worried about if there's a shot I need to make sure I apply his debuff, I can do the blast profile. More than likely get enough dice just to make sure that I actually hit, because all you have to do is hit with the Warwalker and the AP debuff is applied. And so I like that the missile launcher has a 48-inch range. That way we can make these really long shots if we needed to. And the missile launcher gives us the option to do that when the Bright Lance, I don't know exactly what 36 inches, but if I had to guess, it'd be somewhere, like this. But we wouldn't be able to get to, say, like the Rhino in that case. And so having that 48-inch range helps the Warwalker able to apply his debuff basically across the map, which is super useful. We have Baharoth and the Hawks back here being safe because we want to pull them up and bring them back down to do their mortal wound bombs, of course. We have the Farseer Guardian brick back here and Eldrad brick here. I normally don't put the bricks this close to each other, but the way the deployment went, that's kind of what ended up happening. Usually the Farseer Guardians would probably be over here, or it just depends on where the home objective is. Since the home objective was sitting in the center here, this is where I wanted to make sure the Storm Guardians would sticky it right from the very beginning of the game. And so they're always going to be on the home objective, and the Farseer Guardians are usually going to be somewhere else. Now, I did try to keep everything back. You can see that basically nothing in my army is beyond this point outside of the things that have Scout and the things that have Infiltrate, of course. And that's obviously intentional. This army that he has is extremely aggressive. He's got different ways of advance and charging, and he's got scout moves. He's got a lot of things that I don't want getting into my army, and I'm set up in a way where I can still apply some pressure, and I can also score. So my Skyrunner over here can move and get onto the objective. This Skyrunner can do the same. Obviously the Howling Banshees, these Void Reavers can either move right here or they can move up towards the objective. The Striking Scorpions can do missions and different things on both objectives. They can go to the center if I get the central control. And I basically have set up so that I can do any mission that I need. So if I go first, I can do Cleanse, I can do central control. I can do pretty much anything I need to do turn 1. And then I also am set up so that if I go second, my opponent, of course, can take out the Striking Scorpions and all that. I can bring these Striking Scorpions, back this direction after he does his scout moves. And so if I get turn or if I go second, I'm sorry, I can move them back safely. But if I go first, then I can use them to possibly do some different things that we'll talk about here in a second. But I hope I've given you enough time to kind of think about what the scorpions here are doing, what their purpose is, and the idea behind them. Basically, we have a couple sets of scout moves. So we have scouts here and we have scouts here. And I had to decide what I wanted to hem in first. And I only have one set of infiltrators, so I can't actually block both sets of scouting. If I had the points, if we wouldn't have gotten points nerfs, I would have loved to have had another ranger squad here. And sometimes I go back and forth between taking these void reavers and having more rangers, but I do love that the void reavers actually have a bit of a punch, and they have some good OC and their battle line, and so they can just do a few things that the rangers cannot. But in this case, I do think I rather would have had actually the rangers to basically sit here and hold his scouts at bay if he went first. Because the cool thing about the way scouting works is if your opponent goes first, so like for example, if he's going first and these guys have scout, well, my 9-inch bubble from like this scorpion, goes out here, and this one goes here, whatever. It's something like this, and obviously this scorpion's right up there, and this one here is 9 inches from their deployment zone, and so you kind of have these circles, and basically you can see his 8-bound are not going anywhere with their scout move. And so I really wanted to hem in this 6-man 8-bound and slow them down, especially with this leader. I wasn't as concerned about this side because even if they scout and his the spawn advance and they charge, I have my Howling Banshees right here, and I'm not too concerned about him trying to charge in anything turn 1, because the Howling Banshees are going to stop any kind of charge that happens over here. Whereas over here, even though it's very unlikely that he could ever get, if he scouted forward, he could, move, and then the 8-bound are very fast. I think they're like 9-inch movement speed or something insane like that. So if he scouts 8, moves 9, there's a chance he gets some long charges that I wanted to avoid, and again, that's why I kept my units further back here and didn't get them too close to my opponent, because he's just got a lot of speed. The berserkers can advance and charge. These guys have long range scout and lots of movement. So the striking scorpions are basically here to hem in this scout and also put him in a bad position if I go first. Because if I go first, he's going to have to try to scout them 6 inches, and there's nowhere for them to go safe. By cutting off this space right here with my striking scorpions, because of their 9-inch, he can't move within 9 inches of my striking scorpions. And if and in that case, if I go first, I'm going to keep my striking scorpions right here, so he can't go anywhere with these guys other than side to side or backwards. And the problem is, if he goes to the side, he's exposed. If he goes to the other side, he's exposed. And if he goes backwards, he's still going to be exposed. There's no way for him to actually get this unit hidden if I go first. And so my intention was to use these scorpions to guarantee that either these guys weren't going to be doing anything but getting to the scorpions, and I'm happy to let them take my scorpions and be exposed so that I can then take out this block. Or if I go first, in the best case scenario, they can't go anywhere safe, and there'll be a plausible target for me to take out turn 1. And so that is why these scorpions are here. If I would have put them here, I wouldn't have been doing as much, because for one, my Void Reavers already kind of have this objective as kind of where they're headed to score mission actions, do all that kind of stuff if I end up going first. And really the Howling Banshees again are here, and they are going to be enough of a threat to these units that I'm not too worried about that. And you'll notice that on this side of the board, all he has are these 2 units. And it doesn't mean he can't shift some focus. He can bring the Forge Fiend to give some support. But really what my opponent is looking at, and you can tell by the way your opponent sets up, but this is what he wants. He wants these 3 objectives. And this mission we were doing was Purge the Foe. So it was kill and kill more, and then hold objectives and hold more objectives. And so he wants to be able to try to set up where he's holding these 3 objectives, and I'm only holding 2. So he's holding more, and he's always scoring those extra points from hold more. So that I can already see that that's his plan. He really did not put much on this side, And so I know he's basically kind of giving me this objective in a sense. He doesn't want to just literally give it to me. He wants to apply some pressure to force me to put some units here, but he's not putting enough pressure over here that I have to really worry about it. What he's really trying to do is make sure he's got central control and then setting himself up so I can't put anything on here without just all sorts of threats coming in from everywhere, basically, Forge Fiend even. You know, he's got this under lockdown is his plan. And so for me, I'm basically looking at it like this. I have these three that I want to control, so this is kind of my triangle. And so I want the central objective to be mine. And so you can see that I also kind of set up where we have Guardian Brick, we have spiders here. We've got the Skyrunner again, so he can come up and do mission actions. We got the Skyrunner here to come up and be able to do mission actions. The Balroth and Hawks are completely versatile. They can go anywhere I need them to be, so they can support the center. My Dark Reapers can come up and they can again support the center, or come over here and support the center this way. They're gonna have a hard time seeing literally on the objective here, but they will be supporting the long range flanks. And so, and be putting pressure on this objective even from that distance because of their range. And so Dark Reapers are just so useful. I really think you're missing out if you're not taking at least one squad. A lot of people like to run 10 in Seer Council for that very reason. But I tend, right now I'm wanting to test the Warwalker, and it's just, we're a little tight on points, and I want to be using the Swooping Hawks and the Warwalker and do some of these tests. And so I just don't have any more points for the Dark Reapers, but they are very competitive, very good unit, and apply a lot of pressure. So yeah, this is deployment, and you know, I don't want to go spend any more time into this. I already spent quite a bit of time into deployment, but it's such an important part of the game, and you can kind of like win and lose the game right here. And you kind of see that I put my opponent in a bad spot. Like this unit here is in trouble, and the 8-bound are a very expensive unit. And so when you end up getting a unit that's this expensive in a bad spot, it's not great. The other thing that my opponent did is didn't respect my range and my angles, and there's a nice line through here on his Rhino. And so these are some of the things that you want to be looking for. Is did your opponent miss an angle? Because his Rhino probably would have been a little bit safer probably here, because for me to get that angle I'd have to be over here or inside this ruin here, and that means I'm closer to him and closer to the objective that he has on lockdown. And so his Rhino probably could have been positioned more around here and basically done the same job, and this angle across here would not have been open. So again, look for these things where your opponent might have made a mistake and thought it was safe, because it looks pretty safe back there. It's pretty far back. You know, this angle's cut here, but you got to watch out for these ones here on this board. GW has some of these nice long angles that you can get on things in your opponent's deployment zone if they're not paying attention. And so that is something to keep in mind. And again, why I deployed the Dark Reapers down here after his Rhino. So with all this in mind, I did go first. And so let's take a look at what happened after we found out that I went first. Alright guys, so this is after the scout move, and we can see the opponent scout moved these guys forward behind the ruin just a little bit, and he also scout moved his Exalted backwards because he wanted to try to get them back a little bit, but again, there was nowhere safe for them to be, so he just put them in the ruins so that they would at least have some sort of cover. And so our Warwalker scooted over this direction. Our Void Reavers scooted up to get to the objective. Our Striking Scorpions didn't move. That way it forced his Exalted to do that move backwards. And so that was all the scout moves. I just kind of want to show how the scout moves went before we continue on. All right, so this is the setup, and I just want to kind of do this exercise with you guys and kind of maybe put you in my shoes and kind of see what we're going to do here and see if you can kind of see the opportunities. I pointed out a couple little things, but the thing is do we go aggressive or do we stay safe? Do we play cautiously or do we try to do maximum damage? And these are some of the questions that I feel like a lot of players struggle with, especially newer players to this faction and also to this detachment. Seer Council is a tough detachment to play, you have to kind of know the limits of your army and what you're able to do and what you can and can't do. And so this is kind of the situation. And so just, we have Void Reavers up here. We have Howling Banshees are hidden back here, so we do have that as an asset. Fuegan and the Fire Dragons and Lycus and the Warp Spiders with her are in reserves, and so we can't use them turn 1. But we do have, the Hawks back here, but they're all the way back here. And we have our Guardian Bricks here, and our Warp Spiders back here, and again, the Warlock down here. So those are the assets we have. The missions that I drew were No Prisoners and Sabotage, and this is, again, Purge the Foe. So we can score 4 points if we do kill a unit in the first turn on primary, but we need to consider No Prisoners, which you get 2 points for every unit that you kill up to a maximum of 5, and then Sabotage, where if we can survive in our opponent's deployment zone while we do the Sabotage, we'll get 6, but that's obviously there's 0 chance of that happening. But we have to somehow do Sabotage safely, and where would you do that? And so kind of just maybe pause the video even and just take a look at the situation. We have, again, Sabotage, No Prisoners, we're on Purge the Foe. This is what's happened after the scout moves. Now it's a command phase. Just think about what you do and how you would accomplish the missions, and I will go into what I did and talk about a couple. I think there's 2 main ways to play this situation out, but I'm very interested to see what you guys did, and also would love to hear back from you kind of what your thoughts were as this question is presented, because I'm interested to see kind of other people's ideas as well, because this is my play style and I'm going to share a little bit of kind of my thoughts, but it doesn't mean it's the right way to play. Everybody has their own play style, and I think there's a lot of different ways to play Seer Council, which makes it so cool, and I think a great option for a lot of people if you put the time in to get comfortable with the detachment. But yeah, what would you do in this situation? All right, so last chance to pause and take a look before we go on to my movement phase, and you can see what I ended up doing and compare it to your own ideas. All right, guys, so this was my movement phase, and this might seem kind of wild, but yes, I did just push into the World Eaters. So a lot of times I think people feel like the Eldar have to play very cagey and you have to play very cautiously and defensively, but there are instances where sometimes it just makes sense to punish the opponent for a misplay. And I decided in this game that that was what the path I wanted to take. Now, before I go on to this path that I took here with this movement phase, I will say there were some things we could have done. I think it's pretty easy for us to deal with these 2 units if we would have Unshrouded Truthed a unit back here. And we would have, well, actually, I think it would have been back a little bit, 9 inches from this guy would have been something like this. So we would have had to fit him inside here. But we have Janezar and the Banshees moving 16. We have the Void Reavers right here. And so we could probably safely pick up, a couple units pretty easy. But, we could also have tried to get lucky and take out his Rhino with some long shooting from the Warwalker and the Dark Reapers. And so maybe we could get all 3 for No Prisoners. And then we also, I think no matter what, you can bring this guy here to do Sabotage. Because in any case, we're going to be taking out these units, and he's pretty safe here doing Sabotage, because this Forge Fiend can't get angles to him. No matter what the Forge Fiend does, it just isn't going to be able to see that Warlock Skyrunner, and so we're pretty happy to put him there. And he also doesn't bring much damage, so we're not worried about sending him up to try to get an angle on this either. So yeah, we're pretty safe with Sabotage here. This is turn 1, so we don't have to worry about our opponent's 8-bound being, deep struck in or rapid ingress or anything like that. So we did abandon screening here because we don't have anything to really worry about. So there's nothing to worry about in turn 1 from the World Eaters, at least in this detachment. I don't know about all the others. I haven't looked into depth into every single detachment yet with the World Eaters Codex, but I knew I didn't have anything to worry about, and so we don't have to worry about that. And so I think we could have played cautiously. We could have kept units back here. We could have kept things a little safer. and still try to basically take this side of the board and maybe take out the Rhino, and that would have been a pretty good turn. And I think that actually makes a lot of sense. And if that was kind of what you were thinking, I think that is a fine way to play with a little more caution and to play a little safer. And generally that's going to be consistently a good way to play. But I did this move, and let me just kind of talk about why I made each move here real quickly. So I moved the warp spiders up because I wanted to have the option for the next turn to be able to bring them to the center, but also get onto this objective. What you can't see right here is I do have the Warlock Skyrunner sitting right on this corner. We do have something on that objective, because if I can stop my opponent from getting to him, then I will score this objective, possibly. Now, it depends on what he does. If he shoots these scorpions, the nice thing is these scorpions can move to a better spot. Unfortunately, I rolled horribly on my advance roll, and my scorpions were unable to move any closer than this. Ideally, I would have had the scorpions up here. Basically, I would have loved to have placed them kind of like this, and or something along those lines, to really hem in these berserkers, and also kind of basically be a line here to stop these guys from coming and making it hard for Angron to get here, because his base is so big. Yes, he has 14-inch move, but it was something like, if I did something like this, then his move would put him on top of the scorpions, and so I'm cutting off a lot of his movement, and so there's not going to be much opportunity for him to get to this objective. And so that way I can keep this objective safe just by movement alone. So that's why the striking scorpions were there. Again, I rolled terribly on the advance roll, and that's why they didn't quite make it. So Eldrad was able to advance out, and or maybe actually I think I gave him a 2-inch extra movement, so he could come out and then be within 18 inches of this 8-bound. And that allowed me to apply the +1 to wound, and also get his Mind War, which, yes, Mind War is hit or miss, and I can't see his Slaughterbound character, so I can't precision him out, but I can at least do an attack that does d6 damage and have a chance of possibly taking out one of these Slaughterbound. Now, I guess one question I'd, again, like to ask you is just, why do you think that I set up this way, and what do you think the purpose of being so focused on the Slaughterbound was? Kind of mull over that as I continue to talk about some of the other movements, and we'll come back to this, because this was kind of a pivotal focus here with what my plan. So we also moved the Howling Banshees up here, ready to attack. And I'm pretty confident the Howling Banshees take out this unit, and I'm hoping to hurt at least one of these. I know I'm probably not going to be taking it out, the Chaos Spawn, but I'm comfortable with taking out at least the 8-bound. And the Chaos Spawn, I know, is going to do a little bit of damage, but I'm not nearly as scared of them as I am of those 8-bound. The Warwalker is set up to attack both them and or the Rhino. But my intention was to get extra AP into the 8-bound, because they have 3-up saves with 5-up invulns, and if I can get all my guys doing AP 2 with all this shooting, pretty much, into the 8-bound with Ignores Cover with Fade Inescapable, I'm going to be putting them basically on their 5-up invuln, and that's going to feel really nice. So taking out this 8-bound is going to be very important. We're going to line up, of course, the Warwalker into them to get the extra AP, as I mentioned. And the Dark Reapers are going to be able to shoot into them, but also into the Rhino, so we have a dual target, because if we take out the 8-bound, the Dark Reapers will still have a target to shoot at. That's always a nice thing to do with them. The Hawks, unfortunately, couldn't get anywhere meaningful. I rolled a 1 on their advance roll. I was going to try to advance them forward to get some shots on the small group of 8-bound up here, but sometimes you roll bad dice, and they can't get this angle with a low roll that I had, and so we're not getting shots there. But we were able to set up Eldrad to be able to Doom, and the Farseer to be able to guide against the big group of 8-bound, and that's huge because that group of 8-bound is 300 points. The Slaughterbound's 85, I believe. So it's 385 points, almost 20% of my opponent's army just from that one unit. And so by focusing that down, I know I'm doing a big chunk of damage to his army. And if we can get value like that, I know we're going to get ahead in the tempo and our opponent's going to have a hard time catching up. Our Howling Banshees are probably going to be able to take out this group here. I felt pretty comfortable with that. With some backup, maybe do some damage to them. And then also I can probably do some damage into the Rhino with the Dark Reapers in a very likely case. And I wanted to move block with the Striking Scorpions, this block over here, but unfortunately they didn't quite make it. I didn't roll well enough on the advanced roll to get them in a place where they actually truly blocked off these units, unfortunately. Again, bad advanced rolls can sometimes stop your move blocking, but that was the idea with the Scorpions, and we were pretty much able to make that happen. And so if we can actually take out all the things here, his Forge Fiend is going to be able to do something, and we're just going to be okay with that. His Jackals are going to be on his home objective, so I don't think he's going to necessarily go aggressive with them because he's got to have something protecting his home objective, most likely. And then Angron's kind of back in this corner. And so I want to come back to kind of my original question in this. What do you think made me decide to do this aggressive play as opposed to being more cautious? And why this here was kind of what I decided to focus on. And to answer those questions, he's got the Slaughterbound here. And that Slaughterbound means that he can't just, you know, if the Slaughterbound was in the back, this would have been much more risky because as I killed these 8-bound, he could be taking them off and getting them back into a point where not many other units could see them. And so, like, for example, if I shot with my Warwalker and I killed one, all of a sudden some of my units don't get to shoot because my angle is pretty tight here. It's like this, and so I had made sure you know, everything could see that the character. And it's important for these kind of situations, like even the tiniest thing like that where I have line of sight of a character that he cannot lift and take out of line of sight of all my shooting. So no matter how much of these I kill one at a time or two at a time or whatever it is, the next set of units is going to be able to continue attacking because his character is exposed. And so even little things like that can be the kind of breaking point or decision point of, okay, this play should work. I should be able to get enough attacks into this to actually be able to, you know, take this unit out. And if I can take out 385 points here, you know, 150 points here, maybe 30-ish points here, whatever those are, and then, you know, 80 points or whatever the rhinos are. I mean, you're talking about over 25% of his army gone turn one, and that's going to be such a tempo, you know, hill for him to climb that I didn't think he was going to be able to recover. Also, because so much of his army then is just going to be in this back corner. His Forge Fiend can come out and do something. I'm not that worried about it. He'll shoot something and he'll kill a few models. He's not going to get anywhere near as many points of damage as what I did. You know, the Khorne berserkers are going to come out and they're not going to really have a target. The best thing that he might be able to do is send them this way to try to get max value. These guys are too far away. They can basically try to come down and you know, get into the striking scorpions or go for this point here. Angron is also just too far away to do anything on the hit back. He's too far away to get into the center here, and he's just not going to make it. And so he's kind of you know, in a position to where he can't help on the hit back against me. And also it's turn one, so my opponent can't deep strike or rapid ingress his exalted 8-bound that are in deep strike, and so there's not really any way for him to be punishing me in my back line or you know, countering me with like putting them here to counterattack Jane's R or whatever it might be. So I'm very safe with basically once I kill this unit, you know, again, he might kill something, but I'm very safe with all these units over here. And the Dark Reapers are extremely safe. The Hawks, he can't do anything to. And Eldrad can't be touched by anything other than probably the Forge Fiend. And again, that's going to be doing long-range shooting, and that Forge Fiend likes to be within 18 inches to get rapid fire and all this. It's kind of a weird, like, medium-range Forge Fiend. I mean, it shoots fine at 36 inches, but it actually likes to get within 18. So it's kind of it's a little different than some of the other Chaos brands of Forge Fiend. But, you know, and this whole block of some of the most powerful part of his army is in this back corner and just isn't going to be able to do much to retaliate turn 1. And so these were all part of the decision points that I considered when deciding to make this play, because I was, again, thinking there's just not really a great way for my opponent to hit back once I make this play. And so I'm able to put so many debuffs into this unit here with the Doom Guide and the extra AP with the Warwalker that I was completely confident in taking that unit out. And it also gives me this amazing Overwatch threat. This is our best Overwatch unit in the Codex, bar none. And this unit is such an Overwatch threat that he's going to struggle to approach it with much anything outside of Angron himself. And so I felt very good about getting this up here. And then even as a backup, we have, Eldrad in this squad here that can join the fight later, but is at this point going to be completely safe for my opponent's retaliatory turn 1. But all right, so that was a long explanation about this, but this movement phase was kind of, again, a big part of this game, and I just really wanted to explain the reason behind all these moves, all these ideas, and then again the decision-making points about why, because this aggression is not warranted in a lot of games, but I did want to show you guys a game where extreme aggression could pay off, and when to kind of look for it and what to look for when you decide to go for the aggression. And for one thing, I have no prisoners, so I'm going to get rewarded in points for taking out my opponent's army. For another, I have sabotage, so I need to control some space so that I don't get something killed. So my little Warlock Skyman over here is going to do sabotage because I know I can keep him safe. And so with all these things in consideration, all these points of the value I can get taken out of my opponent's army, to me it just made sense to use the aggressive play. But again, there's a lot of these factors that we're considering, and if you don't, if some of these are not there, this play just loses you the game, because if your opponent's set up and we don't get this value, and the Rhino is set somewhere else, and maybe Angron is in a more aggressive position, there's all sorts of different factors that could be, but there's a lot of different things that if it were different, then this play would basically be suicide and we'd be exposing way too much. Again, this is a melee oriented army. They basically have the Blood Angels rule where they get like +2 strength and +1 attack for every model when they charge. So they're just absolutely brutal in melee, and pretty much anything they touch in melee is just going to disappear. So we have to play knowing that. But he doesn't have a lot of shooting. He's got his Forge Fiend, but that's effectively his only shooting. So I'm not worried about being kind of exposed. Whereas if you're going into a different army that has better shooting, being this exposed turn 1 is going to be absolutely just devastating to us. So I just want to make that really clear. Like, this is not how I recommend you just play every matchup, but I did want to show you an example of playing aggressively and kind of things to look out for when you can get rewarded for doing so, and how to kind of win a game very quickly and early. But in the next battle report I do, I'm hoping to get a good game in where I can kind of show how to play more cagey, and also some decision making points and factors in a game where you play cautiously. But let's continue on with how this game went and look at the shooting phase. All right, so after the shooting, this was our situation. Janzar and the Banshees and the Void Weavers here pretty much bounced off of this unit. Unfortunately, my blaster missed, and Janzar and the Banshees attacks. The Janzar's attacks did pretty well. I think I did like 2 damage, so we didn't take out any model, but we did a little bit of damage with Janzar's shooting weapon. Nothing too crazy there. But you can see with all the firepower we focused, this unit was just completely gone. So it's 385 points in my opponent's army gone. We did destroy the Rhino with the Dark Reapers, and the Bright Lance from the Farseer squad actually went into the Rhino, because I was confident, like I said, I was pretty confident this unit without the Bright Lance could take on all the 8-bound with all the buffs, the +1 to hit, +1 to wound, extra AP, all that. I wanted to get a Bright Lance into this Rhino, and it hit and did, I think, 7 damage, and then 1 shot of the Dark Reapers went through and finished off the Rhino. And so, basically mission accomplished so far. We've taken out the 385 points that we wanted to here, and then we took out the Rhino up here, which is going to slow down his berserkers and is just more assets that our opponent doesn't have. And it also makes these berserkers much more vulnerable to our shooting. And so this was a massive play, just put our opponent completely on the back foot, obviously. And, it all stemmed from just not having these units as safe as what he probably should have had them in turn 1. We are also set up to, be ready to do some overwatching if the opponent does come at us. And so we're sitting in a nice position here after the shooting. So let's take a look at what happens with the fighting. Okay, so after we charged and fought, we managed to take out his 8-bound. He actually heroically intervened with the spawn so that he could kill some of the Banshees and stop all the Banshees from going to the 8-bound, but Janezar and the couple Banshees that went in just cleaned up the 8-bound no problem. And I think I took one of the 8-bound down to 2 wounds. Unfortunately, the Banshees kind of bounce because they're not infantry, and so they're toughness 5 and they're 5 up, feel no pains. I think I did 4 wounds to him, but he made 2 feel no pains, and so both of them survived. And on the hit back, he actually killed quite a few Banshees. I think he killed 3 of them. And so all I have left is my Exarch, 1 Banshee, and Janezar. But we did finish off that 8-bound, and these Chaos are no threat to our Warlock, so we don't have to worry about anything there. He also ended up spending a CP to do that, so that's 1 less CP that our opponent has. So this is pretty much it. We didn't do any other charges or fights because we advanced the Striking Scorpions, so they weren't able to charge, and there would be nothing for them to charge anyways. If the Scorpions would have charged into any of the Berserkers, they would have been absolutely wrecked regardless, and they were, again, ideally they would have been placed right about here to block off these Berserkers from trying to approach this point. Yeah, that's basically how things ended. We have our Void Reavers sitting on the point, pretty well hidden. I mean, there's definitely angles on them, but they're kind of hidden in this ruin pretty well. And so they're going to be controlling this objective. We're obviously got a bunch of OC and control in the central objective. And now we'll get to see what the opponent tries to do on their turn, because he's got a lot to make up for. And he's going to have to decide what he's going to try to do on the hit back, because we're way ahead when it comes to army points. Like we've done a big blow to his army. And so let's take a look at the opponent's turn. So the opponent knows that they're in trouble, so he went aggressive because he knew that he had a lot to make up for. So he had stickied his home objective, I think with the Jackals or a CP, I can't remember what it was. He moved the Forge Fiend this way because he wanted to get shots into Janezar and the Banshees. And he actually fell back with the spawn, and I rolled to have the Banshees do the D6 plus 1-inch move. Originally, he had only put the Forge Fiend like up here, and I moved the Banshees to a place where he couldn't even shoot them. But because it was his first time playing the Eldar Codex, he had actually never played Eldar Codex. He'd only played them in the Index. He didn't know that. I did explain it to him at the beginning of the game, but there's so many rules that you tell people in the beginning of the game. I just let him, he had plenty of movement to bring it down here. Basically we just allowed him to move here, and I got my token back, because obviously if he comes to a point where I can't hide from him, then I'm not going to use that token. But one thing that is interesting, that again, that opponents can mess up, if they fall back from you, you can move your Banshees, or move a unit into some safety, and so that's a good thing to keep in mind, and make sure you have some tokens available to actually be able to pull that off. He brought Angron out, but unfortunately Angron doesn't have much in the way of anything to do. He's a melee character completely. He's not worried about these Scorpions because he's got all these Berserkers here. And he brought the Berserkers this way because he's wanting to come down here. And what I found out was the opponent, when I said my Warlock Skyrunner, and I did point to this one, but I don't know if he was just didn't see me like point him out or whatever, but he thought this one was sabotaging actually when it was this one. And so he went really aggressive on this. And so he set these guys up because he wanted to come and attack this, but also hit the Scorpions at the same time and kind of do a dual charge, because he knew he had plenty of attacks to take out both units, no problem. And so that's what he set them up for. He actually brought the Jackals forward and the Berserkers. He did the Berserkers first, And after I did Overwatch and Isha's Fury, I rolled really bad actually on my dice, but we still ended up killing all but 4 berserkers and then the Khorne. So we only killed 6 berserkers. I think on Overwatch and Isha's Fury combined this unit into that, we should have picked up a couple more. But, you know, sometimes the dice are bad. But even still, we have him down to where this unit was cut in half. So that's another, you know, good chunk of points that we just did to our opponent, you know, just with Overwatch. Because the Khorne berserkers are his battle line, and there are 180 points for 10. And so we cut down half of them, or actually over half, so that's another 90 points of models we just lifted off the board. It did cost us, well, 1 CP. I think I had the dice for Isha's Fury, and then with Overwatch, so for a CP, we took out another 90 points, and you know, we're sitting really nice because again, we're getting into the 600 and some points of his army that we've actually taken off the board, and so it's looking really good for us. But once he saw how much damage I did to this squad, he then moved his jackals because he really wanted to make sure he could like bring them in and get me off that central objective. So this is how the opponent responded. Partly because it's just the best he can do. He really is a hard time. I mean, his Forge Fiend has a lot of targets to shoot, obviously. And he wants to get rid of my fights first, of course, and Janzar is just a threat. And then he's wanting to get a good attack onto this objective because this was the objective he like pointed at and focused on, but these striking scorpions are just being a pain. If I would have rolled better, I definitely could have kept this unit from getting over here. But either way, he's got an 11-inch charge to get to my Warlock Skyrunner, so that's just probably not happening. But let's take a look and see how my opponent did on his you know, fight phase, or I'm sorry, shooting phase. He basically just had the Forge Fiend into the Howling Banshees, and his shooting was basically done after that. He did shoot at my striking scorpions with all the bolt pistols, and I rolled terribly, and he rolled really hot, and I think he killed like 3 of them. And even with stealth and you know, summon cover saves and 3-up armor saves, I still lost several of them to bolt pistols and I think a plasma pistol or 2, which was just, you know, again, not great dice rolling, but that's what happens. And I was able to D6 move, but I only rolled a 2 on my D6 plus 1-inch move on my fade back, and I was only able to move them like 3 inches, and so I still couldn't block off this attack completely into my Warlock Skyrunner, but I figured it's going to make him take an 11-inch charge. He probably won't take it. Let's take a look and see what he did. Alright, so this was the opponent's charge phase. You can see Janzar survived the Forge Fiend's shooting, and he got in with the Berserkers and the Jackals, and he made this 11-inch charge into my Warlock Skyrunner somehow, and with his pile in, he was able to pile in enough into the Scorpions to take out both units no problem. 11-inch charge was wild. He literally rolled a perfect 11 on the dice and made it exactly, and you know, sometimes that happens. And I asked him, why did you take that chance of 11-inch charge when you could easily just charge the Scorpions and then consolidate it into the point and taking the objective? And he said he, again, thought that Warlock was doing sabotage, and it was kind of funny because he thought that, he ended up making a better play, even though that play almost never works out. Rolling 11 on your charge is not something to count on, but he did make it, and so he was able to take out my Warlock Skyrunner and the Striking Scorpion, so that was good for him. And then get control back of this objective. This here is a big, scary amount of attacks. Not everything in his Jackals were able to attack, but Khorne and all the Berserkers and all the Jackals that were close and a couple touching. I think he had about 5 that were not able to fight. But with the extra attack and plus to strength, so they're basically usually going to be wounding on 2s. We are -1 to wound because of the Warlocks. I did end up using Forewarned. I had a dice for it, and so -1 to hit, -1 to wound. Even though -1 to wound is redundant, just having that -1 to hit, I was really hoping I could keep my Warlocks and my Farseer alive. That was my goal, because a Farseer just is great for if he wants to spend CP on stuff, you know, that torque is just really important. I think there was something he tried to spend CP on, but because she was in range, he couldn't. With something else at some point in the game. I don't know if it was an Overwatch, but she actually did end up being a factor to stop him from using a CP. It may have been an offensive one. I don't remember at this time. But I was trying to keep anything I could in this unit alive, not because it would let me control the objective, but just because of the Farseer and the Warlock's value. But I was kind of thinking it was going to be pretty rough with the amount of attacks. He also, with his blessings, happened to roll sustained hits and dev wounds at the beginning of the battle round, so he was getting sustained hits with all these attacks and dev wounds, and I was like, yeah, this is not looking pretty good for me. So yeah, this was his charge phase, and he pulled off some pretty good charges. Alright, so after his fight phase, he did clear out the Scorpions, he cleared out the Warlock Skyrunner, and he killed everything but my Farseer and one Warlock. And so, you know, I did keep the Warlock Conclave alive. I did have a single Warlock that was here, but I kept the Warlock Conclave alive so I could continue to have the -1 to wound with the Farseer. And so my opponent was able to almost completely wipe my Farseer Guardian squad, which is now like 300 points, and with the enhancement it's 320. And so that was a pretty big blow, but he didn't kill the Farseer, which is like 90 of those points, and he didn't kill this Warlock, which is, you know, part of the Conclave. He's a little over 27 points. So I still have about 100 points here, and so effectively he actually only killed 100 and you know, closer to 200 points as opposed to like actually 300. But he did make this much less effective, but I still have guide with the Farseer, which is huge, and I still have -1 to wound for them as a little squad there. So it actually worked out pretty well, and I was actually kind of amazed that anything survived the amount of attacks that these units put out. And it shows you just how strong it is to be able to Overwatch and Isha's Fury and take these Berserkers, because had a couple more been alive, there's no way that they would have survived. So my opponent was able to do some killing, and he got Extend Battle Lines, was one of his cards. He also had Cleanse, which he couldn't do, and so he discarded Cleanse for a CP, and did get his 4 points for Extend Battle Lines. So right off the bat, we both got 4 points for killing at least one unit, and we also scored 8 ourselves, and he scored 4, so we ended up being up by what was that, 4 points, and so he wouldn't get a challenge card the next battle round. This was the next turn here, and this was after my movement, and I want to talk about a few things that happened. My Farseer and the Warlock did not do anything on the fight back. They literally did 0 damage, and I ended up drawing Display of Might and Engage on all fronts. And so I had to get things on each board quarter, and I needed to get more units in the No Man's Land than he did, which was very easy. I already had actually done that. So for our movement, we did a couple things. We dropped Lycus and the Warp Spiders here, and the reason Baharoth's with them is because for some reason the model wasn't loading for him, so I just put a Baharoth model there just for to be in Lycus's place so he could just see a model. So Lycus came down with the Warp Spiders, and then we put the Hawks back here, and everything was going to be able to shoot into this squad here. Now the interesting thing about the Berserkers is they do have a Blood Surge, and this detachment has the ability to Blood Surge guaranteed 8 if they spend a CP. So I did not want to put my Hawks within 8 inches to do the grenade ability first, because that would put them in the range of their Blood Surge move. And because of that, my Hawks stayed back here. So if you're wondering why I didn't put the Hawks in position to get their grenade strategy off, it was much better for me just to keep them back, and the Warp Spiders had to be outside of 9 when they deep strike anyways. So being outside of 9 inches, even if he Blood Surge 8, I'm not going to be in melee range, so it won't matter. So I had to keep everything back so he couldn't Blood Surge into my units, and that's something to keep in mind. Berserkers will kill basically any Aeldari unit with just even a few of them make it into combat. And so you have to be very cautious about getting too close to them. and the Hawks, I think, would have absolutely been wrecked by whatever survived from the first round of shooting, because as soon as I shot them with one of these units, which is going to be Lycus and the spiders, and even though they're going to do some damage, they're not going to kill enough of them where they can't blood surge into the Hawks had I put the Hawks within 8 inches. And so, little things like that can be a big difference maker between whether your Hawks live or die. And the 5 mortal wounds on average that I would get from the Hawks is not worth the chance of them just getting absolutely wrecked by the berserkers. So that is why they're back there. So Lycus is going to shoot first. So Lycus is going to apply the ability for us to get critical hits on 5-ups, and then the Hawks are going to shoot and get lethals on 5-ups with their shooting. And that should help us clear the squad up pretty good. I figured between Lycus and the spiders killing several, the Hawks being able to kill several. And I did make one mistake with my movement here. And this Warwalker had the movement. He should have moved up here so that I could have had shots into the berserkers to get the extra AP for the Hawks. And that is something that I meant to do. And I forgot about the Warwalker getting that line of sight when I was moving everything else and just talking to the opponent. But looking back, that's again another tiny little error that would have made a big difference. Just moving this Warwalker slightly up to be able to get line of sight into the berserkers. That would have given all my Hawks the extra AP they needed to be able to actually deal with these berserkers much easier. And also made the warp spiders shooting even deadlier with their AP1 ignores cover would have gone to AP2 ignores cover. The Hawks would have gone to AP1, and I could use Fade Inescapable to give them ignores cover and just absolutely put a blistering amount of firepower into these berserkers. And so we kept Eldrad out, but we moved him backwards away from the berserkers and back away to where I did not believe that Angron was going to be able to move and get a charge into them. And there's a little bit of a mistake here. I took a picture before I was completely done. These spiders actually went over here and lined up here to be in this board quarter. So basically the board quarter is like this. And I realized that I needed them over there. And like the 6-inch circle was kind of like this. And I wanted to keep them outside of 9 or 8 inches or 9 inches of the berserkers. So I had to fit them in this little tiny rectangle here. And they actually fit just about perfectly into this like rectangle where I was 9 inches away from the berserkers. Actually, I think 9.3. And then I was inside this board quarter, but more than 6 inches away from the center. So it was all these little things. So this spider squad actually did end up here instead, so I could score max points on Engage on All Fronts. The reason that they were 9.3 inches away important, though, is that Lycus was 9.1 inches away. These guys are 9.3. The unit has to go closer to the closest enemy unit, so they could not blood surge this way after I shot them. They had to go towards Lycus because of the way blood surge works. If I would have put this at, I believe, equal distance, as soon as I shot with the spiders, they could have blood surged back, and then I wouldn't have been able to shoot with the Hawks. So that's another little tiny detail. Important to look at those things and consider those things to make sure you don't mess up your play from your opponent's reactive moves. Janzar did not move because I brought the fire dragons. You can Fuegan, I don't know if you saw them up here, but they came down to deal with this guy, and they needed the token to not get Overwatch. So I used the token to stop Overwatch from happening, because this Forge Fiend actually has pretty nasty Overwatch. He had done sustained hits again with his blessings. It also has rapid fire and blast, and so the amount of attacks that the Forge Fiend gets is actually pretty wild when he's within 18 inches. And I had Fuegan and the Exarch just under 12 inches away, and the rest of the fire dragons were just behind 12 inches. And so we'd be getting Melta with Fuegan and the Exarch, and they would be shooting into the Forge Fiend. I did not move Janzar because I was worried about the Overwatch, and the opponent was also waiting for that, but I never moved her because she would have just absolutely gotten wrecked. I think she was down to 2 wounds from the prior shooting, so she was barely alive, and I did not want to lose her because her melee into these guys here would be big. And so we're going to be able to shoot with her, we're going to be able to shoot with the Void Reapers, we're going to be able to shoot with the Warlock Skyrunner, and we have our Dark Reapers and the Warwalker able to shoot into either the Forge Fiend or into Angron, depending on what happens. And so we had all sorts of options with them. And you can see down here, he rapid ingressed his Exalted 8 back here. I could have tried to worry about screening it out a little better, but I was more interested in just getting shots off. And so I decided to just not screen that out. And so this was the movement phase. Let's take a look and see what happened with shooting. All right, so after the shooting, you can kind of see Forge Fiend was absolutely wrecked by the Fire Dragons, no problem. The shooting actually between Janezar and the Void Reavers actually took out the spawn, which I was kind of surprised, but the blaster went off and Janezar killed the spawn that had 2 wounds left, and then the blaster, I think, between the blaster and the Nero pistol took out the other one. The Eldrad squad was able to shoot into the berserkers and kill everything. Khorne does stand back up. I actually didn't know that, but he comes back to life on, I think, half wounds. The spiders were here and able to shoot the jackals and absolutely wipe the jackals, no problem. And you can see here where, like I mentioned, I had to put them so that they would score me and engage on all fronts. And you can kind of see here that Lycus and the Hawks were able to take out everything but the Master of Executioners, and he definitely would have been taken out if I would have gotten a shot with my Warwalker into them. The Warwalker ended up shooting into the Angron along with my Dark Reapers, and actually between the Dark Reapers and my Warwalker they did 0 damage to Angron, but that's okay. And so Khorne stands back up. The opponent does have the Exalted 8-bound down here, and he does have the Master of Executioners that's going to be able to come this direction. And so, you know, we're sitting in an interesting place. But we do have the Farseer and the Warlock on the objective. And so we do have that. And we have the objective over here. And he's got the Master of Executions over here. And obviously we have this one stickied as well. So we have very good control of the objectives. He does have his home objective because it's stickied, but at this point our opponent has Exalted 8-bound, Angron, and a Master of Executions, and Khorne at half wounds. He's running out of resources. The game's basically over at this point, but the opponent went to see what he could accomplish and pull off with what he did have. And at this point, I mean, the opponent kind of knew the game was probably over. He took his Master Executions into Lycus and squad and assassinated Lycus with the Master of Executions, precisioned her out, and then my Exarch proceeded to kill the Master of Executions. I think he was down to like 3 wounds or something. He wasn't at full wounds, but the Exarch finished him off just fine. And the hit back, we did overwatch the Khorne as soon as he went to try to go into our Farseer and Warlock, and he had Angron come to the center and was going to try to charge this unit, but actually failed his charge. He went to CP reroll it, but we had the Farseer sitting right here, so no CP reroll for Angron. He did not get a chance to try again to make that charge. Again, Torque has just constantly been a thorn in my opponent's side. Not that I think it would have changed the outcome of this game, but him not getting into this unit was actually a pretty big deal. Had we continued playing the game out, it could have made a little bit of a difference. But at this point, we just control the game so much. He only has Angron, and he has the Exalted 8-bound, and that's it. And the Exalted 8-bound are not going to be a problem for us to take out between all the resources we have, the Fire Dragons, Janezar, with a full Eldrad brick, all the, Baharoth and all the Hawks are going to be able to come down and absolutely do damage to anything we want. We still have spiders to move, so we can move on to this objective. We can move on to this objective with these spiders, move on to that objective with those spiders. We have our Void Reavers sitting on this objective, so there's no way that we don't control the game. Between Janezar coming into the Exalted 8-bound and the shooting, and then basically we have our Fire Dragons that are going to be able to come in and get into Angron. We may have to Uncharted Truth them to get them in range. But between Guide from the Farseer, who's still alive, Doom from Eldrad, there's just no way Angron is going to survive all this. We can bring our Hawks down, and we can decide basically if we're going to go into the Exalted or if we're going to go to Angron. Either way, nothing we shoot into is going to like what the Hawks do with Immortal Wounds and just all their shooting. And so At this point, we're most likely just going to lift everything, and the opponent conceded here. And so, yeah, you can kind of see that we pretty much just went full aggressive turn 1, and we got ahead of our opponent so much in points that they just couldn't hit us back hard enough, and they weren't able to recover and take enough back on the hit back because of the way we positioned. And because our opponent basically had everything in this corner, and we focused our army basically like this, they were just far enough away, and we were able to stay safe enough that he couldn't do a lot back to us. I mean, he was able to take most of the Farseer brick out, but he didn't even finish that off. Farseer still being a pain with torque and guide, and he just had trouble finishing us off. I mean, Jane Czar is still alive. The warp spiders, he killed Lycus, but the warp spiders are still able to move around, do actions, do different things. We have our full squad of the swooping hawks, and they're still able to apply damage and be uppy downy the whole time. We have our whole Eldrad squad with the fusion guns, the warlocks with the strength 7 torrent weapons. I mean, we still have so much power left over, and Fuegan and all the fire dragons left. So I mean, there's just nothing left, and we were able to efficiently take out all of our opponent's units pretty easily, really. And it all started from that one play in the very beginning, just taking out a big amount of our opponent's units to the point where we took out like 25% of their army right off the get-go. And Seer Council just has the ability to do that. Seer Council is so fast, and we have so much built-in damage into our Eldar units that even without big damage buffs like you get in Aspect Host, you get some of the reroll ones in Aspect Host, or the blitzing fire powers, or some of the other detachments have some stratagems that kind of boost our damage. If you just use the data sheets that Eldar have, use them efficiently and put them into the right targets, and then also combine them when necessary with Guide, Doom, extra AP from a Warwalker, there's really nothing that we cannot take out when we are paying attention to our resources and making sure the appropriate weapons are going into the appropriate targets. We really just melt the opponent's army. And so, yeah, I just wanted to show you guys a quick game. Obviously, it ended in basically turn 3, but with Eldar, sometimes that'll happen. You will just absolutely melt the opponent when you play efficiently and take out units with focus. We definitely could have played a little safer, and the game probably would have lasted one more turn, and he probably would have actually killed even less of our units. We definitely could have taken our Farseer Guardian Brick, put them on the left side, made sure we controlled the left side, kept everything away from his units, still popped his Rhino, and basically he would have been slogging everything on foot and been moving to try to take these 2 objectives. But then when he did that, then we could counterpunch with our whole army and taken so much out that, again, I think he just would have been in trouble regardless of which way we went. But I wanted to do the more aggressive option just to show it, and also to kind of show when there might be a good opportunity to go aggressive based on how the opponent deployed, and also the fact, again, it's turn 1, they have limited CP, and they have no ability. A lot of armies will have no ability to bring in deep strikes or strategic reserves, or basically get help on their turn 1 when we go first. And so sometimes when we go first in our turn 1, we need to look for those alpha strikes and the ability to absolutely demolish our opponent in a way that they can't recover, so that we can actually win the game, or start winning the game at least, and get that tempo from the very start. So I hope this video helped you. I hope some of these questions made you think a little bit, and I'd be very interested to kind of hear what you think you would have done, and whether or not you would have been this aggressive, or you would have been aggressive in a different way, or you would have played cagey. I'd love to hear what you would have done and kind of see it maybe in comparison to how I played. This game was a lot of fun. The opponent was a great sport, was using units that he owned in real life, as was I, and it was a great game that he was able to learn more about Eldar, and I was able to learn more about the World Eaters. And I hope this is something that helped you guys between deployment, some movement, target selection, when to go aggressive, why to go aggressive, and different things to look for when going aggressive. I hope that this helped you guys out. Let me know if it did, and we will talk to you in the next one. Thanks for watching.